Okay, let's talk about Rio de Janeiro. You know the picture, right? The incredible beaches, the skyscrapers, the whole postcard scene. But if you look up towards the hills, you see something else entirely. You see a second city kind of layered right on top of the first. Today we're going to dive into this city of amazing beauty, but also of really deep historical divides.
You know, in Rio, they had this really simple way of explaining the city's big divide. You've got the asphalt people. They're the ones living down below in the modern, planned-out city. And then you've got the hill people, living up above in these sprawling, self-built communities. And these aren't just directions on a map. We're talking about two totally separate worlds, sharing the same sky, but living completely different lives.
And the home of the hill people? That's the favela. Now, the word might translate to shantytown, but that label, man, it just doesn't do it justice. It completely misses a century of incredible history, of resilience, and, well, a very, very troubled present. To really get what the favela is today, we have to go way back, all the way to the beginning. Because you have to understand, these communities, they weren't built by choice. They were born out of a historical injustice so massive, it's kind of hard to even wrap your head around.
Just to give you an idea of the scale, think about this number, 11. The Portuguese brought 11 times more enslaved Africans to Brazil than the British brought to all of North America. 11 times. That absolutely staggering fact is the seed from which the favelas grew, making Rio the largest slave port in all of human history. So for centuries, enslaved people were literally the engine that built the city. Then, in 1888, slavery is finally abolished. But here's the thing, this freedom was basically an illusion. The newly freed population was given absolutely nothing. No land, no jobs, no support. Zero. So with nowhere else to go, they did the only thing they could. They climbed the steep, unwanted hillsides overlooking the city and started building shelters out of whatever they could find. That act of survival, that was the birth of the favela.
All right, so let's fast forward to today. Those original little settlements, they've absolutely exploded into these huge, sprawling urban centers. Let's take a look at what life is actually like inside these really unique, self-contained worlds.
The scale is just immense. Today, we're talking about 1.5 million people who call the favelas home. That's almost a quarter of Rio's entire official population, all living in these informal communities. So this isn't some small neighborhood we're talking about. It's a massive city, right inside another city.
And this gives you a real sense of the ingenuity that's at play here. The construction, it's totally organic, almost chaotic. There are no blueprints. You'll see these dense webs of wires everywhere. That's electricity, often tapped illegally right from the city's power lines. But if you look past that improvised setup, you see these living, breathing communities. They've got their own shops, their own businesses, social hubs, a whole vibrant economy that pretty much runs on its own.
Now, it is so easy to hear the word favela and immediately think of crime and criminals. But that stereotype is not just wrong, it's dangerously wrong. We've got to remember the vast, overwhelming majority, we're talking over 90%, are just ordinary, hardworking people. Their families, their workers, their students who are trapped in a system, they are not the cause of it.
But that other 10%, it casts a very long, very dark shadow. Because the state has historically just ignored the favelas, it created a power vacuum. And you know what happens with a vacuum? Something always rushes in to fill it. In this case, it was powerful and violent criminal organizations.
Yeah, for decades, the official policy was basically just neglect. The government and the police, they just didn't go in. And what that did was effectively turn the favelas into these autonomous zones. And while that's empowering in some ways, it also made them the perfect paradise for criminals to operate, with absolutely no consequences.
And one of the most notorious of these groups is the Comando Vermelho, the Red Command. What's kind of wild is how they started. They actually began back in 1979 as a political group for prisoners, sort of a leftist thing. But over time, all that ideology just faded away, and they morphed into one of the most powerful and ruthless drug cartels in Brazil, ruling many favelas with an iron fist, all funded by the cocaine trade.
So, on one side, you have the gangs. But what about the force that's supposed to be protecting people from them? Well, this quote right here, it just gets to the absolute heart of the tragedy. For so many residents, the police don't bring safety, they bring terror. They're often seen as just another armed gang, except this one operates with the government's permission. And this data, it shows you just how extreme the situation is. Rio's police are literally among the deadliest on the planet. For every 23 arrests they make, they kill one person. Just let that sink in. To put that in perspective, in the United States, that number is 1 killing for every 37,000 arrests. This isn't law enforcement as we know it. It's practically a state of war.
So what does this all add up to? Well, it creates this impossible situation, right? A brutal stalemate where millions of innocent people are just caught in the middle, caught in the crossfire.
And this, right here, this is the core of the whole conflict. You've got that 90% of ordinary people who are essentially held hostage. Inside their own communities, they're controlled by that 10% criminal element, and from the outside, they're abandoned and often brutalized by a corrupt state and its police. They are trapped between two warring factions, and there is nowhere to turn for safety.
And just leaving? For most people, that's not really an option. It's a generational cycle. See, you're born in the favela. You try to get a job in the formal city, but you face this intense prejudice just because of your address, which locks you out of good jobs. And without that economic opportunity, you can never afford to actually move out. The system is almost perfectly designed to keep the hill people on the hill.
You know, the story of the favela is one of incredible survival, really, against all odds. But this cycle of entrapment leaves us with this really profound, unsettling question. How can a community ever truly heal when the very state that's supposed to protect it is one of the main sources of its suffering? It's a question Rio, and really all of us, have to keep asking.